Have you ever gone to a new destination without a map? Parenting is filled with new destinations. And parenting is hard. From the time we have kids, we wonder, will we ever get there? So many different stages, so much to learn. Crawling, walking, talking, sports, teenagers, school, friends, college. And just when you have it figured out, things change and you start a new stage. Just like any journey, if you don't have a map, you'll never get there. Our desire at Journey Point is to help you get there, to navigate this journey with you, and give you a map to help you land where God wants you. Join us as we're getting there.
I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I am fired up this morning, so be ready. It's been a couple weeks. We had a serve event that we did last week where we served the community, something we call Pass It On Denver. We did generosity feeds, and the week before I was out, so I feel like it's been like months since I've been up here, so I'm fired up and ready to go, okay? So I just want you to know that. Hey, when you tell people what it is that they just want to hear, I think you're doing that for your own good. So when you tell people what they want to hear, you're just doing that for yourself, right? I mean, think about it. It's so much easier to tell them what they want to hear as opposed to telling them just the simple God's honest truth about whatever it is that we're talking about. And so because it's easier for us to deal with happiness, we just tell them whatever they want to hear, right? We do things like, hey, no, don't you worry about that. You are so great at this, when maybe they're not, right? You know what it is. We look at them and they're maybe dating a new significant other or something like that we don't quite get along with. And so we look at them and say, hey, man, no, they're perfect. Love them. And we're over here going, oh my goodness, right? We do some things like that. Somebody knows that. We tell them that we'd be happy to pick them up at the airport at 10 p.m. because we don't have anything better to do. When we have a lot better to do, and we really don't want to do that. And I mean, honestly, come on, it's 2019, get an Uber, right? I mean, like, can we just get an Uber? You don't have to do anything else, just get an Uber. Or what about someone that you know that you're supposed to remember? Like, you know that you're supposed to know their name, and they walk up, and you're like, oh, yeah, I remember you from that place with all those people. Yeah, man, we go way back. What's up, right? We just tell them what they want to hear. How about this? Parents in the room, I'm just going to go ahead and bank on the fact that you have probably told a white lie to your kids this week. You have. As a matter of fact, I was doing some research this week. Statistics actually show that 45% of parents tell a white lie at least once a week. You may have bribed them on the way to church this morning. I mean, so I know you've done it. And so when I was researching this, I found some of these common white lies that parents tell. I love them. I'm not going to say which ones I've done. I'm just going to say that I love all of these, okay? So here's some of these. How about you're in the car, right? And you're looking back, hey, if you don't cut it out, I will turn this car around. Bro, I got places to go. I am not turning this car around. This is not fitting my schedule, right? Or how about this one? I saw this one. I loved this one. Our kids don't have fish, but it said, hey, bud, your goldfish is a little sick, so we're going to flush him down the toilet so he can go to a bigger place and get healthy. Then we're going to return and pick him up at the pet store when he's nice and good again, right? I'm like, that's wrong, man, on so many levels. I saw this one. I love this one. Oh, bud. The ice cream man plays music when they're out of ice cream. Gosh. Anybody had that annoying toy that like just won't stop making sounds? Right? I saw this one, and you can hashtag these, white lies parents tell. I saw a ton of them. It said, oh, babe, they don't actually make batteries for that specific toy anymore. I'm sorry. We're going to have to give it to another kid. 43% of parents have been told to say this one. Eating carrots will help you see in the dark, bud. I promise. And okay, so you're telling yourself, yeah, well, carrots help your vision. So if that makes you feel better, good. No worries. But there's no night vision that you get from eating carrots, okay? And let's not even go there with things like holiday tales that we'll tell and kind of hold above the head of certain things. We all know those. I won't go into that in here, right? We lie to make things easier. We lie because it's just easier to lie than it is to tell the truth. And it makes it easier on ourselves to do that. And we lie because sometimes being a parent and a true friend is just like really, really hard. And we would just rather be a friend and keep them happy. And we just want life to be as easy as possible sometimes. And so that's why we do it. But see, telling people what they want to hear is kind of like saying you want to be lied to. Just telling them what they want to hear is telling them that they want to be lied to. And ultimately, telling them what they want to hear is just saying what we want to hear, isn't it? Because I think no one wants to be lied to. And if we all kind of sat here this morning and said, oh yeah, I love being lied to, I think we'd be lying to ourselves. We don't want that. We want what's better for us, what's going to help us learn and grow in whatever area of life we're looking at. Maybe it's just friends in the room of other people. Maybe you don't have kids. I guarantee you've been in situations where you would just rather have people be honest and truthful with you as opposed to just lying to your face to help you grow and learn. See, as parents, we know that one of the best things that we can do is to tell the truth to our kids and have kind of some sort of standard for them to live by and uphold that standard for them. And honestly, whether you're a follower of Jesus in the room or you're still kind of processing your thoughts about Christianity, you would say life is probably a lot better to have a standard of truth to live by and then try to live by that the best that we can. You would say that lying to make things better is probably not the goal of anyone. And as you could probably guess, there is a great story in the Bible that we are going to pick up today and look at of what happens when parents are more worried about their kids' happiness over their kids' health in terms of the standard that they live by. You know, we've been talking about getting there, how to raise kids in today's culture. Today is the last message in that series, and we've talked about some really hard things, how we don't need to be stingy with grace with our kids, how really we're the primary kind of leader in the home with our kids. And today, we're just going to talk about how to make sure we're focused on healthiness with our kids over happiness. And in fact, if you walk out of here with anything today, I want you to know that you can be both a parent and you can be a friend if you focus on their healthiness over their happiness. And we're going to look at two traps from a story that we're going to pick up and see the two traps that we need to avoid so that we can focus on healthiness. The passage that we're going to look at today is out of 1 Samuel. It's in the Old Testament portion of the Bible. And so Old Testament is the first half of the book. We're going to be on pages 234 and 235 of the black Bibles that are scattered throughout the room. And as always, if you don't own a copy of the Bible, we'd love for you to take one of those home. We have people that take those every single week. That is our gift to you. We'd love for you to have that copy. But we're going to be in 1 Samuel. And Samuel is in what's called the historical books of the Bible. So if you're a history nerd, this is all your portion, right? And so basically you look at the history of what's going on with God's people, the Israelites. And really, 1 Samuel kind of starts some really big, powerful type of stuff. We see this young prophet that's kind of born and raised into a prophet. And what he does, he kind of takes Israel from being this theocracy kind of led people, like this God-led people, into a monarchy. So now it's like, hey, you wanted a king? So I'm going to give you a king. And so he leads them into this time of kings. And we see a ton of historical stuff taking place. If you're familiar with the Bible at all or ever heard of the man named David, David comes into the picture here in 1 Samuel. And so it's a real big historical kind of book. But here's what I love. We meet this Samuel. He kind of comes into his own as his prophet. But we meet his predecessor, who's a prophet, and a man named Eli, who's also a dad. And Eli gives us some really good kind of bad parenting tips that we can look at to go, ooh, I need to make sure I don't do that. And all of the dads and all the moms, we know, I've got notebooks full of what not to do raising kids. And so we're not throwing them under the bus. We're just saying, man, thank you for giving me that example. And what we'll see what happens when Eli was more worried about his kids' happiness over he was with just pointing them to Jesus. And when he was worried about keeping them happy and all that they're doing over what he was supposed to be doing. And we'll see two traps that we kind of need to avoid. So 1 Samuel, it's on pages 234 and 235. I'm going to pray, and then we're just going to dive in and see what are the traps that we need to avoid so that we can help our kids be healthy and happy at the same time. Lord, we love you. God, I thank you that you've given us a new morning. God, you've given us a new day to come in and hear from you. God, to see what we can do in this crazy journey called parenting, this hard journey called parenting. God, just give us encouragement, give us strength, Lord. There are days we have no idea what we're doing, and I don't think that's necessarily going to go away, Lord, but help us find some kind of a rhythm to figure out how we can raise happy and healthy kids in the way that you've called us to. God, we love you and praise you, and it's in your name. Amen. Hey, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with the end in mind. So the end in mind is 1 Samuel 3, verse 13. And so we're going to read this, and this is at the very end of the story that we're about to unpack. And here's what it says. This is God talking to Samuel, and he's talking about Eli. And here's what he says. He says, I told him, Eli that is, that I'm going to judge his family forever because of the iniquity he knows about. His sons cursing God, and he has not stopped them. That's like shot to the heart, right? I knew what was going on here, and I didn't stop them. See, here's what we do know about Eli's sons. If we pick up in chapter 2, just before this, starting in verses 12, we find out that at the end of the day, basically, Eli's sons didn't respect God. Matter of fact, verse 12 says that. This is how I know it's real hard to pull out. It says, Eli's sons were wicked men. They did not respect the Lord. And so we know that they were wicked and they didn't respect God, but how? Like, what were they doing? Well, basically, here's what was going on. Eli's sons were priests. And so priests, back in this time frame of the story that we're reading, had like high clout, right? They were the go-to. They were people that you looked upon for advice and wisdom, and they ran structure and did all of this stuff that people really honored. And they were really kind of a representation to God for these people at the time. And so instead of following the strict rules, Eli's sons were kind of like, I'm just going to try something else. I think it'll be better if I do this my own way. Specifically, one of the things that they do, if you get into these stories in the historical parts, really starts to talk about sacrificing, and basically that's giving honor to God. So they do these sacrifices, and people did it in a couple of different ways. One of them was by boiling meat as kind of a respect for God. And so Eli's sons were in charge of this, and here's what they did. They would not let the people boil the meat for as long as they needed to. So basically, think that you and your wife or somebody else are at a melting pot, and you're like dipping the meat in, and you're supposed to let it boil until it's gone. Then whatever was left, if there was just little smidgets, maybe then the priest could have it. But Eli's sons were like, hey, dip it down. And it was like, okay, let's dip it down. Okay, that's good, pull it up. And they're like, okay, give me the meat. So it was like, I don't think that's the way it goes. I think we're supposed to let it go forward a little bit longer until all of it's gone. But man, old boys were hungry, right? So they're like, man, we got to eat. Let's do this. Just go down. I like a nice medium rare. If you let it come up with a little bit of blood still in it, I'll be good. This will be fine, right? And so then they would eat it. Big no-no back in these times. Not only that, we find out that also in this, they were priests and they were having inappropriate relationships with women that were there while they were doing all of this. They basically said, hey, I don't care what's going on. We're going to do it our way. And Eli, as the dad, has kind of stepped back. And here's one thing that we see. Even as the people were reminding them that they should leave the meat down longer, this is what it says in verse 16. Verse 16, it says, if that person, the person that's with them boiling the meat, says the fat must be burned off first, then you can take whatever you want for yourself. The servant would reply, these are Eli's sons, no, I insist that you hand it over right now. Matter of fact, if you don't, I'm going to take it by force. So the servant's sin was very severe in the presence of the Lord because the men treated the Lord's offering with contempt. Like it was beneath them to do what they were supposed to be doing. Like I said, if you keep reading, you'll find other things that they do that are not really lining up with what they should be doing. And here's my question. Where in the world is Eli? Like, what is Eli doing as the dad? Because keep in mind here, Eli's not only the dad, he's kind of like in charge of them. He should be making sure things are in order and in structure. He's what in the Bible it calls him the messenger. So basically he's like the speaker for God to these types of people. So he should be keeping them in line. Where was he? What was he doing while all this was going on? And you see, that notion, that aspect brings me to what the first trap that we need to avoid is. We've got to avoid the trap of being present but absent. You see, if our kids and really even the friends that are put in our lives, if those people are going to be doing as they should be doing in a healthy way, we've got to avoid the trap of being present but absent. And now you may be going, okay, what does that mean? I think you know, but here's the deal. Sometimes you can be there, but you're not there. Right? You're there, but you're not there. Maybe you're there physically, but like emotionally, you're so disconnected and detached from what's going on that the kids don't even know you're in the room. Your friends don't even know you're in the room. You're probably sitting there checking Facebook, checking Twitter, checking Instagram, Snapchat, whatever it is that you check. Or maybe it's very important. Maybe you're on work emails. Maybe you're returning emails, text messages, phone calls. Whatever it is, you're there, but you're not there. You're present, but you're absent. And I just think that is so true in our lives in so many ways. And see, here's what happens. When I'm present but absent, it's miserable for those that are around me. I'm kind of nothing more than a roommate at that point, right? Maybe I'm there to meet the needs of them having a home and doing these types of things, but how am I connecting with them emotionally? How am I connecting with them relationally? I'm nothing but a parental figure and a roommate at that point if I'm present but absent. I'm meeting physical needs, but none others. And listen, I don't have kids, or maybe my kids are out of the home now. How does this apply to me? I guarantee you right now, you can think of somebody, maybe even a conversation you had this week, that they were present, but they were absent. Maybe it's a boss or a coworker who reminded you of the job you needed to do, maybe even told you how you didn't do the job that you were needing to do, maybe reminded you of that consistently, but man, were they there to encourage you? Or were they there to resonate with what was going on in your life, or maybe why it didn't meet their expectations? Or were they just off in another world doing what they were tasked to do, making sure that you knew that they were in charge? I think we can all resonate with this. They were present, but they were most certainly absent. You see, true friends, really, really good friends that love you and care for you, they're there emotionally. They're there relationally. They're there to say I love you and show affection towards you in different kind of ways. Maybe they're even there to like hug you in a creepy way that just makes you feel weird, right? Like, man, don't hug me, bro. Right? And so here's what's funny. My son, Trip, our oldest, he's a total mini-me. I mean, he's a little bit type A, kind of OCD. He will bug you to death about systems and structure and process and what are we doing and when are we doing this, Dad, and why are we doing this and what is the outcome? I mean, it drives me crazy, and that's what I do to most people. Here's the other thing. He hates physical affection, like hates it. And just a secret, don't tell anybody, don't let anybody know this. When you like want to come up and give me a hug and let me know how much I mean to you, it literally creeps me out. So I mean, I'm like, my skin right now, like I'm just kind of like, I want to crawl into a hole just thinking about it. I'm not like this physically affectionate guy. I will do it, so don't get me wrong. So there's not going to be a hug line at the end of service or anything like that. And I'm not going to like make it awkward if it happens. But like, that's Trip and that's me. And so you know what I do? I hug him. I love him. I tell him I love him. I tell him not only that I love him and that I want to hug him, but like I'm there for him in good times and in bad. I point him in the direction to where maybe he can grow and learn, right? If I'm really honest in here, I hug him and hold on a little bit longer. You know those people that hug and you're like, hey man, how you doing? And it's like gripped and you're like, what is going on here? And so I'll do that with Trip. Like I'll hug him and hold on a little bit longer just so it creeps him out just a little bit. I'm like, we're creeped out together, buddy. We can get through this, I promise, right? And so I do that so that he knows that I'm not just dad, but I'm a dad who's a friend and who is very present in his life. And that's what we need to be moving towards, right? And ultimately, isn't that one of the goals of being present? To let people know that you're there? To let people know that you care for them? That you're emotionally attached to whatever the situation is? That you're looking to the best interest of them? That's what being present in their life is about. And a true friend and most definitely a true parent isn't just there emotionally, but also there to make to make them happy. So not just there emotionally or just to make them happy, but also to even kind of lean into them a little bit to hold them accountable to things that are going on that you don't see lining up with what should be going on. Teaching them the ways of a standard that they should try to adhere to the best that they can. Avoid the trap this week of being present but absent. I don't care whether it's a friend or a coworker, or most importantly, even with your children, for those that have kids. Avoid the trap of being present but absent. Don't let your stress keep you from being there emotionally. Put the phone down. Matter of fact, put the phone away from wherever you are. Go run to them. Be with them. Put your phone on silent mode. Don't be emotionally unavailable to your kids this week. Don't be emotionally unavailable to your friends this week. Don't just be there to make them happy, but be there to help keep them healthy in a way that maybe only you can. You see, here's the deal. Eli did know what was going on. He absolutely knew what was happening in the life of his sons. He just didn't do anything about it. Basically, Eli was there, but not really. He was present, but he was absent, which led to when he did finally approach his kids and kind of rebuke them for what they were doing. It's in verses 22 through 25. We'll read it in a minute. He had the authority to tell them what to do. He just didn't use it. And quite frankly, if we're honest, isn't this very common in the culture that we're in today? We see a lot of kids and a lot of friends trying to keep people happy more so than keep them healthy. People and parents specifically are afraid to give consequences. We don't want to give consequences to our kid. I'm worried that they won't like me, or they won't think that I love them. They won't know how I really feel if I tell them that this is going to happen, which helps us avoid our second trap for the day. The second trap is this. If we're going to be both friend and parent to our kids, if we're going to do that in a healthy way, we have to avoid the trap of just being a friend who occasionally parents. We don't need to be a friend who just occasionally parents. We need to be the parent who friends, right? Now, don't hear what I'm not saying, okay? I'm not saying you can't be your child's friend. Don't walk out of here and be like, Chris doesn't even want us to be friends with our kids. I'm just going to dictatorship. We're going to make it, they're going to march and they're going to make it happen. And by the way, if you do get that to happen, let me know. I'd love to be able to get my 4 kids to obey a little bit more. I'm struggling. But no, we clearly just identified that you do need to be a friend in their life, emotionally there and available. But what you have to avoid is just being this friend who just occasionally parents on the side, right? Or being the friend who's just there to tell them what they want to hear if you don't have kids. You may have experienced something similar to this, but not quite. I'm just referring to it in parent world as the friend zone. Just like the friend zone. We know the friend zone from a dating standpoint, right? We don't want to fall into the friend zone. Same thing as parents. We don't want to fall into the friend zone either. Here's the friend zone. In parenting, it's when you try so hard to be your kid's friend that you really don't hold them accountable to what you need to hold them accountable to. And you're the only one that can really hold them accountable to it. You don't ground them. You don't discipline them. You don't take the screens away from them. Right? You're afraid they won't like you. Here's what I love. Have you ever said something oh, okay, well, we're going to let it slide just this one time, which turns into 15 times? Or maybe at work that night, but it's hey, you can't have dessert all week long. But then we're we're going to Constellation Ice Cream. And they're pitching a fit. You don't even want to deal with it. All right, well, just this one time, but the rest of the week you can't have ice cream, right? It's the friend zone. I'm worried about how they're going to react when I am doing that. We don't want to fall into that trap. And I may get an email on this week, but isn't this kind of where we got to the everyone gets a trophy mentality, right? We want everyone to feel loved and a part. We don't want anything to happen where they won't feel like they were a part of this. And if this team wins and this team doesn't win, we're just going to give trophies for everybody. Now, I'm all for people feeling connected. I am all for people having an equal opportunity at any given point, but I also think there are some life's lessons in holding people accountable, right? Because I think most of us in here that have jobs, not everybody gets a trophy in our job if we don't come up to par with what we need to come up to par with, right? And so we're teaching life skills to our kids when we say, hey, I love you, and you did amazing, and your effort was unbelievable, but that team won. You didn't. And again, I'm not against kids feeling loved and a part of it, but like at some point we've got to say, hey, bud, let's try harder for next time. And maybe we don't even celebrate winning or losing anyways. Maybe we celebrate the effort that they put forward, right? And so that's how we got into this everyone gets a trophy mentality. And I think the mindset is right, but I don't know that we've completely gotten it. And it's almost kind of like what we saw Eli do in this story. Eli should have absolutely led his children to see that they had consequences for their actions. He in fact, should have honored God by doing that. He should have held them accountable, and that was his way of honoring the position that God put him in. I mean, remember what verse 12 said? They were wicked. They didn't respect the Lord, honestly, or really the position of priest. They were doing what they wanted with the sacrifices. They were having relationships that were not appropriate, and they were getting away with it. This is what verse 22 says. We know that they were getting away with it. Verse 22 says, now Eli was very old. He heard about everything that his sons were doing to all Israel and how they were sleeping with the women who served at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Verse 23 says this, he said to them, why are you doing these things? I kind of actually see him like standing back like, why are you doing this, guys? Come on, right? Like there's nothing in there that says that's the way he did it, but that's just where my mind goes, right? He says, why are you doing this? I've heard about the evil actions from all the people. No, my sons, the news I hear about the Lord's people spreading, it's not good. So let's just compare. Say you've got kids, or just put yourself in the situation with kids. You have some friends over at your house, and your kids come out and they just 100% completely disrespect everyone that comes to your house. Or better yet, you go to a friend's house. You're over at your friend's house, and like it's Tasmanian devil in their house, right? They are just knocking stuff off. They don't care. They're breaking it. They're kind of looking at the parents and saying, I really don't care. It's not my stuff. Like, everything inside of you, like right now I'm getting a little just fired up just thinking about my kids doing that. I may have some experience with it. We're not going to go there. And so if you don't invite me over to the house, I get it. I have 4 kids. But so like I'm sitting there with just this wrath that is like coming inside of me thinking about my kids doing this. And we would expect to see that from Eli also, wouldn't we? But we don't. He literally is kind of like, oh, boys, why are you doing this? Why? The news I hear is not good. People are spreading rumors. What's going on? And then verse 25, I love this. Verse 25 shows us the consequence that they received. This literally is the only consequence they receive in this story that we're reading. It says, think about this, guys. If you sin against the Lord, who can intercede on your behalf? Now, there's grave consequences to that, but like that's the end of his consequence to them. Here's what I equate that to. Hey, boys, go to your room and think about what you've done. I don't know about you, I have 3 kids that are boys. When I send them to the room to think about what they've done, they are not thinking about what they've done. Matter of fact, I think they're up there just like fighting and doing something. I'm like, what is going on? They're supposed to be in trouble. And he basically just sends them to their room. See, Eli was ultimately worried about his relationships with his kids than what he knew God desired him to do. He was more worried about keeping them happy than helping them follow what God wanted them to do. And verse 29 says so much. Here's what verse 29 says. It says, this is from God. It says, you have honored your sons more than me by making yourselves fat with the best part of the offerings of my people Israel. You've honored your kids more than you honored me, Eli. Basically, Eli did nothing. How do we know that he didn't do anything? Remember our key verse that we started with today? 1 Samuel 3:13. I mean, here's what it says. It says, this is the Lord, told him that I'm going to judge his family forever because of the iniquity he knows about. His sons are cursing God, and he has not stopped them. Parents, Jesus has called you to be the primary person of influence in your kid's life to show them Jesus. He's called you to be the primary person of influence. in your kid's life to show them Jesus. Do not be more concerned about keeping your kids happy than you are with them following Jesus. We cannot do that. The same is true with our friends, those of us in the room that don't have kids. Love your friends enough to point them in the right direction. Love your kids and your friends enough to be able to look them in the eye and say, man, I just don't see this line up with what you're supposed to be doing. I think you missed the mark a little bit here. And in order to get there, I think you need to be thinking about these things. Love your friends enough to do that. Let them know that you love them and that's why you're telling them that. Avoid the friend zone, right? Be a true friend to them. And parents, be a true parent to your kids. Avoid the trap of being present but absent. Avoid it. Avoid the trap of just being a friend who occasionally parents to them. Avoid that. Teach your children the ways of Jesus and don't be afraid to hold them accountable. Do not be worried about keeping them happy as much as you are about keeping them healthy. You do that, I promise you'll get there. If you worry about keeping them healthy and that relationship healthy, you'll get there as a parent. It's not gonna be easy, I'm not telling you that, but you'll get there. One of the things that Seth mentioned last week was that there are parents who kind of show the sacrifice of Jesus to their kids as an example when they're disciplining them. I am one of those. I do that all the time with my kids. And so I'll do something like, I'll get down and I'll be like, hey, Pax, why did you hit your brother again? This may be real. I may have had this conversation this morning. Why did you hit him again? Because he made me mad, Dad. Okay, first, calm down. Like, we're just talking here, bro. And I'll look at him, I say, well, do you deserve that consequence? And he'll just kind of sheepishly look at me and go, yeah. Here's the kicker. If he doesn't understand that there are consequences to his actions, if I haven't parented to him to let him know there are consequences to his actions, this has no value. None. If there's never any consequence to what our kids do, this showing them the picture of Jesus has no value. Because they need to understand that there's a man named Jesus, and he's sacrificed on my behalf. I was unworthy. I was the one that was hitting my brother, that was prideful, that was arrogant, that was having relationships outside of marriage. I was that person, and in light of that, and actually in spite of that, Jesus still loved me. In order for them to understand that my consequence put Jesus on the cross, they've got to know that there are consequences to their actions. That a man lived a perfect life, not even deserving to be where he was put because of me. And he would have done it just for me if it was that was it. And so they have to understand that. And so I'll come back down and I'll say, bud, you deserve that punishment that you just talked about. But here's what I want to do. I want to show you a picture of what Jesus has done for you. Because even though you deserve that punishment, he said, no, I'm good. I've got it. I'll take it. So I don't give him the punishment. And that is the clearest picture of what Jesus did for us that I can give our kids. And here's the beautiful thing. It doesn't have to be with a 9-year-old boy. He did the exact same thing for you. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you're from. I don't care what is going on in your life, what is currently taking its toll on you. I don't care the hurt and the pain and the struggle that you have. Jesus did the same thing for you.